Today I'd like to present Cole & Son's new wallpaper collection, Archive Anthology. The origins of Cole & Son go back some 140 years to 1875, when a man called John Perry, who was the son of a Cambridgeshire vicar, set up a wallpaper factory in Islington in North London. At around this time there were about 200 wallpaper mills in London alone. We're at the centre of Victorian industriousness and inventiveness, and John Perry quickly established John Perry Wallpaper Factory as a leading manufacturer of its time. In the early 1940s, Perry's was in turn bought by a man called Albert Cole, who, along with his son Frank, established Cole & Son. Between John Perry and Albert Cole, as competing manufacturers shut down or declined, they managed to acquire extensive woodblocks, pattern books and archival documents from all of these companies. And so now Cole & Son is home to one of the biggest archives of woodblocks, screens and archival documents in the world. For Archive Anthology, they had an awful lot of material to work with, which was incredibly exciting. And so the anthology really is a collection of old favourites, designs which have been constantly updated throughout the years and printed in various colourways. And we have a selection of new designs which probably haven't been seen for 50 years or so, if ever. The first design in the collection is Florencecourt. Florencecourt, like many of the designs in this collection, was originally a block print. But interestingly and unusually, this is the only sample we have found in the Cole & Son archives of this print. We had no idea what it was called, and so we came up with the name Florencecourt after the village in Northern Ireland, which is home to one of the oldest yew trees in Europe. And I think most of the yew trees that you now find in churchyards around the British Isles actually come from this original Florencecourt yew. We've reproduced it in 5 colourways as a surface print to try and maintain the lovely textural effects that you would have originally got with the blocks. So we start off with this rather arts and crafts teal on what we call a tea-stained ground, followed by a nice verdant luscious green, a lovely soft olive, and then a rather dramatic grey, sort of almost like the yew tree in moonlight on a dark navy ground, and finally this lovely cool neutral. What is also interesting to note about block prints in general is that they were trimmed narrower than standard width wallpapers are today. What we've had to do is actually recreate the extra section of the design which is missing, and so you can see here that the artist has actually had to paint in the repeating section on the trim. Next in the collection we have Hummingbirds. This hasn't been produced for some years, at least 30 or 40 years for Cole & Son. It was a block print and quite evidently is a companion to the very popular Hummingbirds design. It was nice to be able to play with colour in a new way with this design. We've produced 4 colourings, sort of lovely soft multicoloured olive on cream, and then a rather more moody classic duck egg, and then a nice wintry colour, sort of cool greyed off silvery leaves reminiscent of an English winter, and then a more classic tea-stained version of these lovely soft raspberry colours. Next in the collection we have Chippendale china. Now this is interesting because it reflects the wave of Orientalism which was hitting London and the UK during Victorian Britain. Trade with China and the Far East was already fairly well established at this point, and after a series of exhibitions in London, sort of Oriental, Far Eastern styling became very popular. Again, this was originally a block print, but has then been sort of reproduced over the years as a roller print. You can see on part of this old screen proof sections where the block would have originally been slightly split or damaged, and this is actually carried through faithfully through to the cylinder print. So we've reproduced this for Archive Anthology in a number of lovely colourways, keeping it as a 2-colour print of ivory, a soft cream, very elegant smart grey, an olive, and then an emperor yellow and a very Chinese red. Now we come to bamboo. Again, originally a block printed design, and in keeping with the chinoiserie mood of the time, this very elegant design features bamboo shoots, which we have actually changed slightly. So we've reproduced this design in 5 colourways, and as you can see, we've actually filled in the shadowy bamboo in the background. So rather than an outline, we've actually just given it a fuller appearance. So we start with this lovely blue and grey, followed by the classic green and lime, and then a rather unusual pink and grey. Now, one of the things that we were very keen on when we were colouring this collection was to use some of the old colours that would have originally been produced when these designs first came to light. So the pink is a very old colour, which is actually featured in one of the old Cole & Son paint charts, alongside this rather dramatic khaki green here, which interestingly was called Thames Green in the old paint chart. Doesn't say much for the pollution in the Thames at that time. Now we come to the sweet pea design. Sweet pea is one of Cole & Son's classic floral chintz prints. It's been reproduced many times over its 165-year history. Originally a 7-colour block print. We can see it here, one of the very earliest colourways. We've done a slightly more modern take on the colouring. So we start with this very classic pink and yellow, sort of lovely green leaves, and then a much softer, prettier pink with olive leaves, and then a lovely soft lemon yellow ground, classic lilac and purple, finishing up with this really beautiful cornflower blue on a cream ground. Now we come to Victorian Star, a very simple, very classic little snowflake print. We have these 6 lovely soft colourways, ideal for background papers, soft blue, linen and white, and this lovely old yellow, white and cream, very classic, soft linen with white, finishing up on this sort of very old porphyry plaster pink. Now we come to Chinese toile, again going back to that very sort of strong trend for Orientalist and chinoiserie style papers. This is a block print taken from the early 1800s, which in turn came from a fabric from the Toile de Jouy stable. We've produced it in 4 new colourings, reflecting both the contemporary and the period colours of the time. So we have this sort of wonderful slate blue and grey, classic neutral, and then again a rather more dramatic charcoal with gold, and not forgetting of course the Chinese red. Egerton is the next of our designs. So we begin with this very dramatic blue and cherry red colouring, and the blue is actually taken again from our Cole & Son paint chart, which is called Stuart Blue, so it's anyone's guess who Stuart is, followed by sort of rather lovely delphinium blue and grey, the classic duck egg ground, which has become a little bit of a Cole & Son trademark of recent years, more normal lilac and green, finishing up with a very smart neutral. Strawberry Tree. This is an interesting print because it's one of our very few arts and crafts designs. Originally block printed, as so many of them were, we've reproduced this design as a 10-colour surface print, so that we've managed to faithfully reproduce all that lovely texture and movement within the print. We've printed this in 3 colourings, this wonderful sort of archival arts and craftsy colourway, going into a much cooler pink and white and eucalyptus colouring, and finishing on a much more straightforward classic red and cream. This rather inauspicious little design is actually one of our oldest. It was a block created in the 1890s named Alma. Now Alma was a very popular girl's name of the period, so we can only assume that it was probably the name of one of the printer's wives or daughters. Again, this has been reproduced throughout the years in varying colourways, produced here in 6 lovely colourings. We start with this lovely soft lemon yellow with white, moving into this lovely gold on linen, classic white and cream, very smart and elegant grey and white, moving into a deeper grey with white, and finishing on this sort of rather lovely Wedgwood style blue. And this really does look very nice. Here I am in the Cole & Son block cellar, which houses 1800 wooden printing blocks which have been acquired over the last 140 years, many of which are still used today to print wall coverings for many of the grand houses and palaces and royal residences in the UK and indeed all over the world. One of these designs is Madras Violet. This block was created 150 years ago, and here we have an original example. And the block was created usually out of pear wood, because pear wood was the wood that was the most stable and didn't split. So the four colourways. First colourway is a beautiful yellow and green colourway on an ivory ground. Then we move into soft lilac with lovely soft silvery grey leaves. We then have a richer plummy colour on a linen, and lastly a colourway which is probably most faithful to the original colourway in the archive, which is this classic violet and green on a tea-stained ground. This is Georgian rope trellis, another of those classic Victorian trellis patterns. The original blocks for this were created in 1820, and this has been a consistently good seller for Cole & Son throughout the years. We've reproduced it now in Archive Anthology in 7 new shades of ivory, putty, very smart grey, classic straw, yellow, olive, and lastly but not leastly, duck egg. And lastly we come to one of Cole & Son's most iconic and treasured designs, the Hummingbirds. So these were the original blocks for Hummingbirds. This is also one of our oldest block prints. These blocks were created in 1772. It is still one of our best-selling designs. Today we've printed it using the surface print technique, which is a much easier way of production. And what we've done is we've created 2 new colourways on top of the 3 existing best-selling colourways. The new colourways are this wonderful dark midnight blue with these really rich, beautiful colours on top. And then we've also created a lovely soft pastel colourway, which is extremely pretty and offers something as an alternative to the classic colourings that we already have.